This is In the Trenches, broadcast 37.
Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
Welcome back, everyone, to another broadcast of In the Trenches. Today's guest is Simon Granner of the Simon Granner Show. It is a business-related podcast, and he's had some incredible guests, including, among many others, Chris Cerrone, Chris Brogan, Michael O'Neill, and I know just recently a good friend of mine, John Lee Dumas of Entrepreneur on Fire, Jordan Harbinger, and so many others. And Simon's show is really a powerhouse show, I think, in my opinion. If you're interested in business, you should listen to it. If you want to start your own business, you should definitely be listening to it. But today we're going to get into a little bit about how Simon started that, and how he's used maybe what we might call strategic interviewing to put himself in front of people, and get and how he's managed to leverage those interviews to building lasting relationships with great people. So Simon, hey man, thanks so much for showing up and joining us today on this call.
Yeah, absolutely, Tom. I appreciate the opportunity.
Yeah, so let's get right to it. I gave a brief, albeit probably not the best intro to what you're doing, so I apologize for that. But tell us a little bit about yourself and what you're doing.
Sure. So, like currently what I'm doing, or like a backstory?
Let's do a little bit of a backstory, and then we'll get to kind of what you're working on right now.
Okay, sure. I'll give you the sort of like the 1 minute background on Simon. So I've been an entrepreneurial minded type person. I haven't been an entrepreneur for my entire life necessarily, because I've had jobs and sort of thing. But I've always thought outside the box, and I've always done things. I've started various different companies that have failed and succeeded. And in my professional life, I worked for a tech company for a little while called Grubhub, and then I built a financial services practice the old school way, offline, for a little over 2 years, into a very successful and profitable business. And then I recently left that in the last few months to do coaching, consulting, and obviously what I'm doing now is the primary hub of what I'm doing is interviewing extremely influential and entrepreneurial people, and frankly, just interviewing people that I want to learn from. And there's a very specific strategy to pretty much everything that I'm doing with this. So we can get into that if you want, but that's basically what I'm doing now in the world of audience building, and hopefully some digital courses and that sort of thing coming out, which we talked a little bit about offline before we started recording as well. So.
Mm-hmm. No, I think it's awesome. And I definitely do want to get into, if we can, really all those topics. But let's start first and foremost, because I thought this was fascinating, kind of how we started the conversation about, why you started your podcast, why you started your show. And you had mentioned and maybe I misinterpreted, but it was strategic interviewing, or you used the word strategic, which I like, as opposed to say something kind of more generic like networking. But that there's a thought process that goes into why you started the show and who and the purpose behind it. So tell me a little bit about that and why, like what that means. And why you're doing that?
It's a great question. So I think in this world of like blogging or podcasting or anything where it's like content creation related, I think that there's a lack of focus on what people's objectives are. And I think that there's people, John Lee Dumas is a great example of someone who's doing an awesome job of inspiring people to start podcasts. But you see a lot of people that start podcasts or they start blogs, and it's like, what's your purpose with this? Like, what are you looking to accomplish? Like, I talked to a friend of mine, Scott Reinen, and he uses his podcast specifically to interview people that could be his clients. So he interviews people that are, like sports stars, and he does a branding firm. And he interviews people that maybe need his services and talks about their personal brand. And then they're like, oh, whoops, looks like I need to hire you for $10,000 or whatever for my personal brand. So there's no cookie cutter format for what you do. It's just like, what's the purpose behind what you're doing? And I think the why, anyone can start something and the how-tos and tutorials are all there for anything you want to do. There's no reinventing the wheels for anything anymore. It's just like, why are you doing it and why should you do it? And what's your purpose that you're looking to accomplish with it?
So would you say that it's basically essential that you start with the purpose, you start with that why?
I think so. I mean, it's very difficult to accomplish anything if you don't know what you're trying to accomplish, or even if you don't know what you want to accomplish. Like, for instance, like my journey, I knew what I wanted, but I didn't know 100% what I wanted. And I knew that by interviewing people, because I'm so curious, by interviewing people that are more successful than me, I could learn and sort of carve my path by doing it that way. And that's why my show is so conversational and so just curiosity driven versus like 19 questions, because I don't care what everyone's favorite book is. I just want to know why they're successful. You know what I mean?
No, for sure.
And I want to know that shortcut that they took, and then I can shorten my path to success.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's funny because the reason I started In the Trenches, this podcast, was there was no grander vision than simply I was like, I need a reason to have conversations with people. And I was like, would they give me the time of day if I said, hey, you don't know me, but I want to take up 30 minutes of your time? Delete, right?
Yep.
But presenting it as a podcast, say, hey, I want to promote you, I want to promote your stuff to my audience. It's the perfect segue. And I've gotten, like you said, the opportunity to get in front of people that maybe I'm undeserving of getting in front of, actually completely undeserving of, and yet now they're giving me their time. And the cool part about a podcast, sorry, now I want to get this back to you in a second, but is really that you can, because you mentioned being curiosity based and the conversational piece of it, which I think I very much am, and it's the same way. It's like, it's almost like free consulting.
Right. Totally.
So tell me a little bit about your show then, like why, like you're strategically, why you set it up, in terms of, well, you kind of cover that, but has it, since you started it that way, it was to get in front of these great people, has it segued into anything more than that? Can you change the strategy? Does that question make sense?
Totally. I named my show the Simon Granner Show because I wanted it to evolve, and I want it to continue to evolve. And it is basically a business show where there's like one or two people that aren't directly related to business, but if it's not business, it's personal development. So I sort of lump business and personal development into the same category. And I have a tagline, which I'm dropping actually, by the way. It's level up your life in business, which is just kind of just like a bogus tagline that I put up there. It's like the minimum viable podcast that I put out there. And just because I wanted to put my voice out there and start to learn what my voice was. And I knew that I had a lot of things inside my head, and I'd taken a lot of action before. So I knew that I had value to provide, even if it was just curiosity. But I wanted to just start it. And I think like by starting it and then seeing where it goes and then taking strategic action, like, so I lined up a speaking engagement at Columbia College here in Chicago because of my podcast. So I just talked to someone that I knew, and they're like, oh, I lead an economics class. And then there's another class that does this entrepreneurship thing. And I was like, sweet, I would love to speak to your class. And now I'm speaking in front of like 100 people. It's free, but I don't care because who doesn't want to speak in front of 100 people? It's just good practice. So I try to open up, and it's also opened up different doors for consulting, which is just people just come to me and said, I need to do something, and you seem like a guy that might be able to help me with it. You know what I mean? So I think being open to, in the world of entrepreneurship, you have to be open to a little bit of tangents maybe, and a little bit of just creativity, because there's no one paving the road for you. You have to pave it for yourself. And sometimes you have to like literally put the gravel down and then put the concrete on top of it, because on dirt almost all the time, because there's no one doing it before you. So
yeah, absolutely. So, I'm coming at this from the perspective of somebody who might be listening, who might be interested in starting something, not necessarily sure what, say maybe they even have an interest in podcasting. What you said, minimal viable podcast, right? So like what is the basic stuff that somebody has to have when it comes to, a strategic vision of what they're doing? What's like that? What is that minimum, viable strategy? And then what does that product have to look like for it to actually be, I guess, something worthwhile or something that can grow?
Yeah, that's a great question. And number one, that's sort of borrowed from Eric Ries's Lean Startup, the minimum viable product, where he just says like, get something out into the market instead of being a perfectionist. And in hindsight, like my audio quality is not as good as it should be. And I just spent $1,500 yesterday on audio equipment, like, and it's really going to be good quality. And so like now, like the purpose that I did it with a USB microphone and just like basic, and some people are like, your content's awesome, but your audio sucks. And I'm still have like 8,000 organic downloads without cheating, in like 6 weeks or whatever. And I'm getting some good guests, and the people that are listening like it, and they're bypassing the bad audio. But don't focus so much on the tech. And there's always tutorials. Go to Pat Flynn, go to John Lee Dumas, go to Podcast Answer Man, and they'll give you the basics for what you need. But you can start with a USB microphone and just start talking into it. But I would focus more on like, what value are you going to be talking about? Like, what are you going to be doing on the show that's going to make anyone listen? Like, why would anyone tune in? If you were a listener, why would someone even want to listen to your show? And who is that person? And maybe it's you. Maybe it's like you're talking, you just want to solve problems for yourself. So you just ask the people that you want to learn about. You want to be the best gardener in the world. So you ask the world-class gardeners how they did it. And then aspiring garden people come and listen to your show or whatever, you know what I mean? But I think it's just taking that step and taking that action. And I think the imperfect action is more important than having everything packaged up. Look at John Lee Dumas. He's reiterated and innovated his show ever since the beginning. His design is always changing. He didn't start with the world's best podcast. And it's now is a very, very good podcast because he's taken so much massive action.
Yeah, I love that. You know, what's also fascinating too is the story you brought up earlier about the guy who does the sports branding.
Mm-hmm.
And he set it up then in particular strategically. Again, you maybe not to overuse that word here, but it is.
Do it.
Exactly that. It is exactly that. And it's saying, I have this business, it's a consulting business or something like that, or a branding business. What's the best way to it's a question of, and you've read the Lean Startup, so you'll get this, but it's a question of like sales channels and marketing channels and how you reach your customer. I think what a brilliant way to reach them without being like the opposite of sales. I mean,
sure.
What are your thoughts on that?
I love it. I mean, I'm actually trying to parlay my podcast into doing some consulting, and I'm trying to like basically get into a startup as a very, where they pay me and like basically consulting to help them grow. And I'm leveraging my podcast as a vehicle that gives me some credibility in the online marketing space for that. Sandbox Industries, basically. I sent them an email this morning, actually. So I think I apologize. Well, I forgot your question. The strategic thing.
Yeah. Well, it was just actually it wasn't really a question. It was just more a thought put out there, and it was the concept of like using it as in particular a podcast to be essentially like the perfect like sales channel and marketing channel.
Yeah. So I'm obsessed with that because I'm obsessed with the idea that I can email, like now my mindset, I come from a sales background. So it's like from the salesman's perspective, it's all about gatekeepers. Like you can't access people. Like you can't access a CEO. And I just interviewed Michael Stelzner, and I have no reason to interview Michael Stelzner if I'm a software salesperson only. If I'm Simon Granner and I sell software to Michael Stelzner, he does not want to talk to me because everyone tries to sell Michael Stelzner software. But if I'm Simon Granner, I am the host of a show where I interview people that are entrepreneurial, and I also happen to have a software sales business or whatever your back-end business is. It doesn't matter, but you can get away with being a media company. And all these people are like John Lee Dumas is a business person. Chris Brogan is a business person. Michael Stelzner is a business person. And they get away with pretending to be a media company on the front with this massive business on the back end. And it's genius. And I'm obsessed with that. So I think it's a great tactic that's exactly. Scott Ryan's getting away with being a host of a media company show to funnel directly business into his business to drive revenue. And he gets away with it. It's working great. So
yeah, here's a question for you. I'm hearing that, and I think to myself too. It's one of those things that I think when a lot of people look at the landscape, whether it's podcasting or blogging, they say, "Oh man, there's thousands of shows out there. There's thousands of blogs out there. Every niche and every industry, whatever, has been covered. It's too competitive." And but I think to myself, I obviously I don't think that way, but I wonder when I look at that and I see that reaction, I wonder if something like this is a great example of how the landscape is completely not tapped at all, because you can get so hyper specific and you can use it as a part of the sales funnel to something larger. Does that make sense at all?
Yeah, it does. I think that there's always an excuse to be made for why you can't do something. And I started the world's most generic show where I interview successful entrepreneurs, and it's the name is my own name. You know what I mean? Like and it's a podcast. It's like, that's the most generic thing. And it's a general business show. Like, what could be more generic than that? There's no niche. It's just, and I'm getting people to listen to it. Like, I'm getting like 500 to 1,000 or whatever listens per episode. And I haven't even done any guest posting yet. I haven't done any outreach beyond just doing my interview show, which is a bad strategy. I realize that. But I mean, there's 7 billion people in the world. And if you look at all the 450 people that have a business show or have a whatever your niche is, if you do want to have a niche, that have a show or have a business, there's enough for everybody. You know what I mean? There's how many people haven't solved all of their problems in their life, and then needs to be people to solve those problems. So there's always room, I think, for a good product or a good business.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, before we started recording as well, we talked a little bit about social media and stuff like that. So we've been kind of talking about podcasting and the idea of getting in front of people that maybe you wouldn't otherwise have access to. And I thought that was pretty fascinating. But tell me a little bit about. You also mentioned the concept of being in the right place at the right time. Can you talk about that a little bit? Sure.
So I have a really good strategy that I've been waiting to divulge. But number one, I'll give you the whole play-by-play. But I was interviewed. I was coached by Navid Moazez. He helped me launch my podcast. So that was my shortcut to like getting my podcast up and new and noteworthy and whatever. So he helped me for 1 month get my podcast up there, and we've built a relationship and a friendship. So we keep in contact a decent amount. He lives in Stockholm, Sweden. I've never even met him live, just via Skype. And we're friends now. And he introduced me to a person that's local in Chicago, Andy Crestodina, because of he interviewed him, and however we knew each other, it doesn't matter. But he introduced me to Andy. Andy gave me a free pass to this conference, which is like $250, a free ticket, like as a speaker's guest. I've never even met him one time. He's just like, you trust Navid, I trust Navid, great. You can come to this conference 2 days before it started. So I went to this conference, and I knew no one. Like, I haven't tapped into literally anyone in the online world or the digital marketing space or the entrepreneurship world really in Chicago. I just haven't yet. And I don't know why. I've been connecting with people all over the world in the United States, but not locally in Chicago, even though I live in the heart of Chicago. So I'm like, I need to connect like with the people in Chicago that matter. So I look at the speakers roster for Content Jam, and I look at all the speakers, and there's 350 people that are attending this event. So I'm thinking, like, if I'm going to meet and connect with anyone, it can't be everyone. I don't have time for that because it's only 6 hours long, this conference. It's a one-day thing. So I went and I looked at all the speakers, and I added them to a Twitter list. So I looked up all their Twitter handles, and I added them all to a Twitter handle, a private Twitter list of all the speakers' Twitter handles. And then I literally just went in and I looked at their bios, and anything that was unique. And if they liked cookies, like they're like, oh, I'm a speaker and I wrote 17 books and all that stuff, and I'm great at content marketing, and I love raspberry jam. I would tweet at them and just say, why do you like raspberry jam so much? Or something that's just like completely unrelated to, I want to meet you, I want to network with you, I want to like be your friend. Just something so warm that it's like, oh, my friend would ask me that. You know what I mean? And I did that with every one of them. The night before, I just was just not aggressively, but I would poke in, or I would join the conversation. Twitter gives you that ability to join a cocktail party in a non-threatening way. It's less threatening than email even. So I did that. And the beauty of Twitter also is that your face is there. So if someone happens to see your tweet, and no one's real on Twitter anymore. So if you're real and you're not spamming people and you're just like, hey, like genuinely, if you read their article and then you write something directly to them on Twitter about it, chances are they might respond. So I had 5 or 6 people out of the 15 respond back to me that night or that morning. And then I showed up to the conference, and one of the guys was like, hey, I saw your show. You have a show. Like, we should connect at the conference. He's one of the speakers. And I connected with him at the conference. He's like, hey, Simon. It's like he knew me already. I've never met him once in my life. I've never met anyone in this entire conference once in my life. And now he's introducing me to everyone else. So then now I'm sitting with, and I go and I leverage this. So I was like, this is a cool dude, first of all, Brad Harris. And I was like, I leverage this, my relationship with him and now I'm sitting with all the speakers that are just hanging out like between sessions or whatever. And these are all like super successful, multi-million-dollar producer people that I'm just like hanging out with them. And they're like, who the heck is this guy? You know what I mean? But they don't care because I'm just being a normal person and I'm not trying to, I'm just being a real person and just talking to them. But like the beauty is that it was all built on Twitter. That's what I'm obsessed with. That was maybe long-winded, but I think it's useful.
No, that's awesome. I don't think it's long-winded at all. I love it when people kind of peel back everything and show it transparently what went down. Because even if somebody doesn't use Twitter, it's still helpful to see how it went down, how you use Twitter anyway, to maybe even take that same kind of strategy or same technique and apply it to whatever platform of choice. But it's
just something else. Yeah, I just happened to use Twitter. It doesn't really matter if you're on something else. You do use whatever you want, or just use the phone or something. It doesn't really matter. Just the strategy is much more important than the application, I think.
Yeah. So tell me, what are you working on now? Like, what are your goals in terms of like moving forward and what you, as far as how you built this platform? You know, what are the next moves and next steps for you?
Good question. So I'm working with my coach on that right now. And what we're doing is coming up with a sort of a 3-tiered approach. And I'm launching what I'm going to call interview influence, I believe, which will be sort of a 3-tiered product. And it'll be kind of like a minimum viable product, but I'm going to soft launch it with whoever will basically be willing to like whoever in my audience or my email list that's interested in it. And I'm going to severely discount the price and just use that as a beta test and just say what do you guys want? Like, this is what people have been telling me. They've been asking me. I've had a lot of people ask me like, I need to start a web show. I need to do a podcast. And other people are just like, I just need to learn from you. And I don't really know what that is. Like, I don't know what I need to learn from you, but I feel like I have something to learn from you. And so it's difficult for me to package that up into a product and sell just like me. So part of this product is, in addition to like, this is how you start your web show, which is what a lot of people are asking me, is just like my time. So coaching, you know what I mean? Just a coaching package that's maybe a little bit cheaper than I would normally price it, just because I want to like productize it in that way, almost like you would with a mastermind. So that's kind of my next focus is specifically generating revenue from a product-based thing from this podcast versus just coaching and consulting, which is maybe a little bit more ambiguous. And it's also prices a lot of people out that don't want to pay a lot. So
I think I'm going to steal that from you. I like that. I am planning something that's a similar, going from consulting to productizing it, I guess is maybe a good way to describe it. So when you present that, this is where I'm stealing your brain.
Do it.
I'm getting free consulting. So I'm curious, as the way you would do that, would you approach it basically? You mentioned obviously giving a discount because it's basically a pre-beta or something like that. You're letting early birds in to help develop a program. Do you offer it in the context of saying this is like the way you pitch it, and pitch is probably the wrong word for it, but the way you set the offer is, are you saying normally like this would be like, this is how much I charge for consulting, but because I want to productize this, I'm going to let you in at this amount or something like that?
Yeah, I will maybe talk about how much I would charge for consulting. Well, consulting pays more than selling products, like on a per client basis, but it's not scalable. And so that's where, so like in terms of launching it and like that discussion, what I'm going to do is a live webinar or like a live Google Hangout on air. And I'm just going to talk about it. So it's going to have the Q&A at the end. And then I'm going to have like, these are the 3 tiers. And it's not 100% mapped out yet, but like my ultimate goal is to have a very, very premium product for around $1,000 that's comprehensive around the concept of interview influence. And it'll obviously give you all the tech end of it. But more importantly than that, it will give you like the why and the how and the mindset and like the purpose behind it. and sort of like teach you what to like, how and why to do it versus just like, here's a tutorial and like, now you can use this system. You know what I mean? Why should you use this system? So in terms of that communication, I am going to definitely tell them that it's going to be cheaper now. And there's going to be some sort of urgency there. Like you're going to have 3 days to make a decision. And then I'm going to cap it at like 7 or 10 people or something very small. And then those people are going to be rewarded with unlimited upgrades. Like when I build out, like they get continued because they believed in me at the beginning. That's just how I'm structuring it. And I'll have probably a few different price points, and then let them pick.
I love it. I actually wish I had like another half an hour with you to dissect this even more. But poorly, I only planned for 30 minutes. So I'm going to wrap this up here at our 25-minute mark and say, Simon, this was awesome, hugely beneficial. I know the audience is going to get a kick out of it. And to give the floor back to you and tell us where people can reach out to you and connect with you.
Sure. So probably the best place to connect with me, I actually set up a custom page for you. It's not live now. It'll be live when this interview goes live. simongranner.com/TomMorks. And there's a free, like a video course. It's sort of like an intro to a little bit of this, but it gives you a little bit of behind the scenes of what goes on in my production, that sort of thing with my video show. So that's simongranner.com/TomMorks.
Awesome. I'll make sure that's linked up in the show notes. And obviously you guys all heard it. Check it out. I know I will be because I want to check it out. So awesome, Simon. Really appreciate it, man. This is great stuff.
Great. Awesome.
And that wraps up another broadcast of In the Trenches. If you're interested in checking out the show notes, just head over to tommorkes.com/podcast to see our latest episodes. Also, I just wanted to give a quick update to fans and listeners of In the Trenches, and specifically what I'm working on right now. For the past 2 years, I've been publishing books, my own and others, through Insurgent Publishing, my boutique publishing company. In the past 6 months alone, I've helped 4 individual authors launch their books to bestseller on Amazon, including Dan Norris's The 7-Day Startup and David Nihill's Do You Talk Funny, among others. And both of those books are still top of the charts months after launch. I've learned 2 important things from all this. Number 1, that people still read books. And believe it or not, they're willing to pay for the good ones. And number 2, the $60 billion book industry is only getting bigger, and the barrier to entry is only getting lower, which means access to this market has never been closer to the average writer, blogger, or author. It is literally within the grasp of anyone who wants it. But you need to know how to approach it the right way, with patience, with a strategy, and with the right implementation and execution. That's why I've been able to launch so many bestsellers, many that are still top of the charts, because we brought great books to the people who wanted and would pay for them. No slimy sales tactics, just honest, powerful marketing. Now, I want to show other authors and publishers how to do the same. 4 months ago, I launched the pre-beta to a new super secret platform called Publishers Empire. In that time, I've helped a dozen authors and publishers start to bring their ideas to life. And with their help and feedback, we've quickly developed what is, in my opinion, the best, most comprehensive publishing training platform in the world. And now I'm getting ready to open the doors up to a few more students. So if you're interested in being part of a tight-knit family of publishers who help and support one another through their writing and publishing projects, if you want access to over 100 HT training videos to take you through the writing and publishing process, if you want access to proven copy and paste book marketing and sales copy, stuff that we've used to launch bestsellers, and if you'd like professional book covers and templates you could plug your own work into and look like a pro in minutes, and if you'd like all of that while getting the chance to be mentored by me, check out publishersempire.com and sign up to be notified when we launch. That's www.publishersempire.com. I hope to see you there. As always, this is Tom Morkes. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the Resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tommorkes.com. Never fight alone. Join the Resistance.